What's up, fellas? Time to do another edition of Blazers fans reacting to teams from the rest of the league. Today we're doing the Memphis Grizzlies, who had a little bit of a shakeup this offseason. Sadly, Oregon Ducks legend Dylan Brooks no longer on the team. Him and Ja Morant can't continue their wonderful team chemistry together. But they did add a few good locker room guys by all accounts, good players. Marcus Smart, Derrick Rose, new additions to the team. Hopefully they'll get Steven Adams back. But probably the big thing to talk about with this team, Ja Morant suspended 25 games to start the season. So they're going to have to hold water until they get their young superstar back.
Yeah. So the Grizzlies, I think, are well equipped to handle Ja's absence. They've done it before when Ja's been out before, like with injury, and did just fine. So I mean, they've had that experience of doing it. They got Marcus Smart in there. He's going to play a lot of minutes for them, but he's going to be able to just slide into the starting role. Obviously, they won't have the offense of Ja Morant or the assist making of Ja Morant, but he provides that defensive intensity that they lost with Dylan Brooks and also slightly less annoying tendencies. So I think that was a good move for them.
Slightly.
And we'll see how they handle the 25 game absence, though, because Ja is a big part of what they do.
Yeah, it's very possible that this is a case of addition by subtraction by moving on from Dylan Brooks. I think that was the right move for the team, especially when you kind of replace him with Marcus Smart and Derrick Rose. And you're talking about like locker room guys. Obviously, Derrick Rose probably isn't planning to play a whole lot of minutes. That's not necessarily his role. He might have to play some, though, on this team in the first 25 games when they're missing Ja. Because, I mean, they have, a couple of guys who can handle the ball. I guess after Marcus Smart goes out, maybe Luke Kennard might have to bring the ball up a little bit. But, I mean, they're definitely looking at needing someone who can at least get the team into the offense. Maybe Derrick Rose can do it. It would be awesome to see him get some minutes again. He pretty much was resigned to just being a mentor in his previous couple of stops. So I'd love to see him come in and actually play a little bit of basketball, maybe get the team off on the right foot, and then obviously set the stage for Ja to come back and maybe provide him with a little bit of mentoring too.
I think Desmond Bane will probably get a lot of point guard time. He's the starting shooting guard, but he has the ball in his hands a lot. In the playoffs last year, when Ja Morant missed time with his hand injury, Desmond Bane did a lot of the ball handling for him. He was their primary playmaker, so they have him to fall back on as well. I think a loss for this team, kind of flying under the radar a little bit, is Jones, Tyus Jones. Is that right? Yeah, Tyus Jones. They did get, a couple of point guards to plug that hole, but he was like pretty like league wide known as the best backup point guard in the league for the last couple seasons statistically. His very good decision maker, didn't turn the ball over. Just a solid point guard, kind of did all the things that you would expect from a point guard, but without the flash. And I think that's why he maybe is kind of flies under the radar a little bit. But you could kind of look at Marcus Smart as a similar player, maybe, but maybe a little more flashy just because he flops all the time and people get annoyed at him and pissed at him. So he maybe has a little bit more of a name for himself. But I think that, losing Tyus Jones could potentially hurt some of the production of the rest of the team just because of his decision making. But Marcus Smart, he's a solid point guard, not just defensively, good offensively, pretty good passer, knockdown three-point shooter. So looking at the small forward position, though, who is that, Riley? Who's there at the small forward position for the Memphis Grizzlies depth chart right now? That surprises me a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very, very sorry to the Memphis fans out there, but I didn't catch a whole lot of Memphis games last year. I live a few time zones away. And to be honest, when I started looking at the depth chart, I have never even heard of John Conchar. So I looking at his statistics, I mean, hey, 5 points a game, that's better than I could do. Props to him. But that's your starting small forward on a team that's going to be seriously missing scoring while Ja Morant's out. I mean, Marcus Smart can hit threes, but he's not a volume scorer in the way that Ja Morant is. A lot of it's going to fall on Desmond Bane and on your bigs, I'm afraid. And, obviously we'll see how Jaren Jackson does this year. He had a pretty good year last year, but that's going to be a lot of pressure on Bane and Jackson to do the bulk of the scoring potentially. Especially with Marcus Smart's just not a bulk scorer. So it'll be interesting to see. I think they could use a little bit of scoring at the 3 position, and maybe that means they'll be playing some small ball with, some of the guys who can score, like maybe some Smart, Bane, and Kennard minutes or something like that. It'll be interesting to see.
I do wonder if Conchar will actually start for them. They also have Aldama, which I don't know, if he's that much of a step up from Conchar, but I remember he played good minutes for him last year too. So it's like, even if they don't have a star in that position, they're very solid and they have depth. And, like you mentioned, Luke Kennard can slide into that role potentially. I do wonder, is Steven Adams going to be back? That's going to be a big deal for them this season. It says game time decision right now for his status. So if he's back, that's going to be a big factor for them as well.
I think a lot of it speaks to Taylor Jenkins. I think he's a really good coach. I think he has the Grizzlies ready to play a lot of the time. I do think that that's their weak link at small forward, but they do have depth there. They do have depth, and I do think Kennard will play minutes there. I think the guy I want to talk about the most right now is actually Jaren Jackson. And the reason why is because there was some interesting chatter surrounding him with FIBA ball. Obviously, he had an amazing season this NBA season, but he was not rebounding well. There was some accusations of block chasing. And, the U.S. got ousted in a manner that not a lot of people liked, but I'm not saying it's all his fault at all. But I'm just saying it's going to be interesting to see if he takes some of that and helps him fuel himself into this upcoming season, because there was some chatter coming his way about not really playing as well, just chasing those blocks. But definitely going to be interesting. He's going to have to step it up big time right off the bat, coming out the gate when Ja's out.
I would say with Jaren Jackson, really, even in last season when he had, a career year, looked really good. And I mean, his rebound numbers have been slowly coming up, but I feel like he should be getting more than, 5 or 6 boards a game at the starting role in that position. Part of it, I get, Steven Adams gobbles up a lot of rebounds. That's definitely part of it. But I have noticed with him, there's a tendency to do that something Blazer fans will remember from Hassan Whiteside's tenure.
I knew that was going there.
Instead of just like playing defense and boxing out and getting the rebound, going for the huge block and, completely blowing up the play so that the team scores on a putback. It ends up being a little bit selfish. It ends up being not a very good team style of play. So it's something he might need to look out for a little bit, that, extra 0.2 blocks a game is just not worth losing games. So, hopefully he comes in, rebounds well. Maybe some of it will depend on whether Adams is there or not, how much rebounding he really needs to do. But I do feel like he should get more than 6 boards a game, Adams or no. He's big and athletic. He should go get the ball.
To be fair, what he's been doing has been working in the Grizzlies' favor the past couple of seasons. They're the 2 seed, and he's been a key piece to that. It's not saying that he's a bad player by any means, but I think he's got to come in and be the clear leader of the team right off the bat. I know Marcus Smart will provide some presence, but while Ja's out and with this chatter from FIBA, I think Jaren needs to come in and just show him that he's the clear-cut second best player on the team. Desmond Bane, also great player, fun to watch. Just nothing. I feel like every time I watch the Grizzlies, I'm just like, man, Desmond Bane just does not make mistakes very often. That's like what I always take away from his game. I'm like, wow, that was a good shot. Wow, that was a smart read. Wow, that was a clutch play. I feel like Desmond Bane is a player a lot of teams wish they had. So they really hit on him when they picked him and later in the first round of the draft.
I think probably the biggest factor with Jaren Jackson is Steven Adams' health. I think that if Adams is healthy, those two guys fit together perfectly because you have the enforcer, Steven Adams. He gets the rebounds, does the dirty work, sets the hard screens, cleans up, the loose balls, all that kind of stuff, and allows Jaren Jackson to go chasing those blocks and get 3 a game, which is what he averaged last year. Crazy number for blocks in addition to a steal. Defensive player of the year, right? I think he was defensive player of the year. And so Steven Adams' availability really allows Jaren Jackson to be that defensive player of the year. But when Steven Adams went out, they got real small, and it became very obvious that Jaren Jackson is your primary big guy. Just wasn't going to work as well. Clearly outplayed by Anthony Davis in the playoffs, I thought. Davis just looked bigger, more athletic, in every way. We got to the balls quicker than Jaren Jackson. I felt like he blocked every shot Jaren Jackson put up. And I think that was because they didn't have that big body to put on Davis and allow Jackson to roam off the ball. So that's a big factor for Jaren Jackson. But I do agree that maybe it also has something to do with maturity. Maybe if he, young guy, 24 years old, if he can take that next step and mature as a player, maybe on and off the floor, allow his teammates to be better. Kind of like we were talking about with Luka last week. He has some a little bit of growing, like just all the skills, all the talent. If he just harnesses those and becomes a real professional, maybe that's not the right word, but if he matures a little bit more and figures out a way to win games with those skills, he's going to be a force. But I just don't feel like he's quite all the way there yet. I mean, I guess they win games, to be fair, but not in the playoffs yet so far. They haven't really made a deep playoff run yet.
Well, one thing is, looking at their depth chart, when they're healthy, when Ja comes back healthy and Marcus Smart gets moved to the bench, most likely, I think that they're pretty deep. They're deep enough, certainly. I mean, you go down Marcus Smart, Kennard, Xavier Tillman. They got Kenny Lofton Jr., the big body boy out there. He's like a bowling ball in a good way. He's crazy. If you watch his games, he's like Zach Randolph, but slightly more like ball handler, and it's pretty crazy. So
David Roddy's no joke either. He's a
Roddy,
big body. He kind of reminds me of Dylan Brooks a little bit, but without some of the problems that come along with Dylan Brooks.
Yeah. And even Zaire Williams, he's come in and played well in the past, kind of, I think, more up and down, although I'm not as well versed in Grizzlies lore, as a Grizzlies fan would be. But long story short, I think they've got the makings of another good roster. It just really depends on how well they come together when Ja's out. If they get off to a slow start, the West is going to be tough this year. I'm not sure if they're going to be a 2 seed this year, to be honest. I think that there's just a lot of competition out there. I'm not saying that they're going to fall, out of the top 4 maybe, but I think something more like the 4 seed this year could be in their wheelhouse, although they could still see playoff success there. I'm just saying regular season wise, I see them more as like a 4 seed this season.
Yeah, I think that they might end up with a pretty similar record this year to where they were last year. Last year they won 51 games. I think that they may get off to a little bit of a slow start without Ja. Might take them a little time to find their identity, not having him. And then when he comes back, it's going to be a matter of finding that identity again. That's a hard thing when you have a player come in about, halfway through the season or a little less, is that you have to start and stop twice. And both of those times takes a little bit of time to get into a rhythm. So they may end up being more like a 45 to 48 win team, which would probably put them somewhere in about 4th. I think that there's going to be a lot of competition this year from the Nuggets and the Kings And then we've talked about this on here before. The Suns are either going to be right up there at the top or way down there in the play-in, depending on how things go. So there's some competition this year.
Yeah, it's tough for me to peg where they're going to land because last season they got off to such a strong start, and then they kind of faltered in the second half of the season, started to struggle, and some of that had to do with Steven Adams' injuries. The John Morant issues definitely played a factor. And I don't really think that they're going to get off to that same start that they did last year, just because John Morant's going to be out. They have some new pieces that they're working with that they're going to have to try to figure out. But if Adams is healthy, that might kind of help balance things out a little bit. So I pretty much agree with you guys. I think they'll probably be, I don't think they'll be as high as 2, but I think it would be pretty surprising if they were like fighting for play-in position. So I'd say they're probably somewhere in that 4 to 6 seed, maybe in the play-in, but I don't think they're getting much higher than the 4 seed this year, just because 25 games without your superstar is a lot of games to get through, especially with new players trying to figure each other out to start the season.
If there's any team that can weather the storm, it's probably them. Like I said, they've done it before, they've done it well, but that is rough to start out like that, just right off the bat. But we'll see. And I think that the real test for the Grizzlies, as is with most teams in this position, looking to take the next step, as is with the Kings, is what do you do in the playoffs? Because I think that they're going to be in the playoffs. I think that for sure they're going to be in. And if they aren't, there's some issues going on with injuries more than we know. But what do you do in the playoffs? You've had a high seed a couple times, hasn't worked out. What are you going to do this year? How are you going to take that next step? And maybe Marcus Smart's presence helps with that and maybe brings that kind of winning mentality that he had with the Celtics. But we won't know till we play 82 games. So can they – what do you guys think? Do you guys think that they're going to maybe be first round exit, second round exit? Think they'll make a run?
The West is just – it's just so hard. Like, the depth in the West, looking at what kind of, when you're talking about 4 teams left in the second round, Denver, LA, Golden State, then you got Phoenix, Sacramento, the Clippers are always sneaky in there somewhere. Then you got some of the young gun teams like New Orleans, if Zion stays healthy, Oklahoma City. It's a tough route to even get to the second round in the West right now. I think the chances of them getting to the second round are slim.
Yeah. I think that they'll probably end up in a situation where they have like a 4 or 5 first round matchup that's probably going to be pretty close. It's going to be 2 similarly situated teams. You could kind of go either way, but I think I don't really see them beating any of the other teams that are going to be in the top of the conference. So maybe get to the second round, like coin toss, but I don't think they're making it any further than that.
I think you guys are probably right as currently constructed. I think that they could potentially make a move and maybe see an upgrade. Maybe if they get a wing defender, like what if OG Anunoby gets put up on the trade market and they can swoop in and grab him, then maybe you could see some upward mobility here. And I think it comes down to the trade deadline with them. I think if it's as constructed, then they might be like a first round exit or a second round exit. But if they make one move and they upgrade at that small forward spot that we've talked about, I could see them making a run. It just depends on, and it also depends on how Ja comes back.
Yeah.
Ja comes back and he's kind of matured a little bit and he says, okay, I see what's going on. I understand more now. Then we could see some progress. But if he comes back in and still kind of bringing the same energy and we're kind of another playoff struggle, then it's going to be interesting to see what happens with the team moving forward.
Another playoff struggle, another gun charge.
Another gun charge. Yeah.
The life of a Ja Morant fan. I'm sorry, you guys.
Oof. I remember last year we were talking about is Ja going to take that next step, become like an MVP candidate, and we're still left asking that question because he really didn't get his chance last year, too marred with off the court issues. So I think the deciding factor with him. If he can get that straightened out on the court, man, he's obviously a force to be reckoned with. But it'll be interesting to see. I think another just quick note on him is he plays a little, some might say recklessly, and it's led to some injuries that have hurt the team in certain situations. So if he can get that under control as well, I think that's another big step for him to taking that next step. But man, as far as the raw tools to be an MVP candidate, he has all of them. Memphis fans, let us know in the comments what you thought about what we thought. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time.
Bye.